Welcome back to Close to Broke. My name is Kieran. It's a pleasure to have you guys on board today. We are currently heading over to a new casino. Yes, even I'm impressed. We never seem to break out of our shell. This is the first video since our southern expedition as we traveled through the southern parts of the United States. Check out the sunshot, guys. You guys into that? A quick break in the action to let you guys know some important news. We're having that wonderful meetup game July 16th at 6 p.m. at the Lucky Lady Casino here in Los Angeles, California, in Gardena. If you guys have any questions, please leave comments down below. I'll answer every single comment like I always do. If you haven't already, make sure to click the like button down below. It goes a long way. As well as subscribe. If you guys can call the casino, the number will be down in the description. You guys can actually put your name on the board, and you guys can constantly look at the board. Seats are going to be filling up fast, so I'm thankful for you guys for stopping by and making the effort of hanging out with me. But until then, let's get back to the video. Hey folks, so I said one thing, did the other, classic Huron. So I wanted to go to the gardens like I mentioned, as I was saying, but unfortunately ended up at the Commerce. The traffic is just way too crazy and there's only like 2 games, so I'm scared I'm gonna be on a long board after sitting in traffic. So 5 games here at the Commerce Casino and they are chilling with no board. So we're gonna go ahead and run inside and see how it goes, and yeah. That we're not really accustomed to, but we're actually at my restaurant right now for the first time ever, and yeah, we're gonna go over some hands, trying to stitch to the scenery, like trying to get out, trying to be like a human or something like that. So let me know what you guys think. So the very first hand we're gonna be going over, under the gun raises to $40. The cutoff, hijack, and myself on the button make the call. We're 4 ways. We look down at pocket 5s. The flop is 6-4-4. It actually checks over to me, and I go ahead and decide to bet here. As I'm thinking, the most important thing, and the only reason I even bring this hand up, because it's pretty ABC in reality, is that the sizing that you choose, that you go with, is so important and relevant in a spot like this. The board is completely rainbow. It's already paired. There's low cards. Obviously, I want to bet when it gets checked to me in position to protect my hand and protect my equity in it, and obviously remove any equity for any overcards in the hand. But most importantly, we can do that without putting ourselves or a great amount of money in jeopardy. I don't have to go 75% pot here. I don't have to go even 50% pot here. For the most part, 35 to 45% pot's always going to get the job done. And if it doesn't, you're going to get the same information out of the hand anyways. We double block any of the straight draws that are out there, so we're really just looking to get hands like ace high to call. And at the end of the day, if we're able to get king highs, queen highs to fold, and some random gut shots, it's like a win-win reality. So just be mindful of the bet sizing that you choose. And in this situation, I just wanted to really drill that in, is that you don't have to bet these huge sizes on these really static board textures. There's not a lot going on this flop. It's rainbow. The only straight draw that's out there, I'm double blocking. So it's just, you should be conscious of that and conscious when you're betting on these board textures. So luckily, everyone decides to make the fold. Like I said, it's really important to remember those little things. Like the fundamentals of poker are like really getting stuck in my head now, especially after how bad I played in the last session. So we'll see if we can continue the situation, continue the good poker playing. Piggybacking on the last hand where we talked about how you should change and manage your bet sizings on static and dynamic board textures, here's the polar opposite of that. We're under the gun and we look down at ace king of hearts. We go ahead and raise to $35. Both the cutoff and the big blind decide to make the call. The flop is ace queen 9 with the ace and 9 of diamonds. When it gets checked over to me, again, this is such a dynamic board texture that it's important to now start going a little bigger with our bet size. I decided to bet $60, which is going to be exactly 66 to 70% of the pot size. And again, I'm doing this on purpose. I know that there's a ton of draws out there and it's my job to price them out or to get them to make unprofitable minus EV calls. And again, be conscious of that. One thing to make a hand is just bet to bet. Like, your bet sizing should have a purpose. So when I go and bet the $60 here, the cutoff folds and the big blind decides to make the call. The turn is the 7 of hearts, so the flush draw is still out there. The opposition decides to check to me, and once again, I have an option here. My choices are to bet again or to check and kind of play a little more deceptive. In my head at the time, the most important thing for me is to be cautious and understanding of my opponent's range. Straight draws and flush draws are very obvious and prominent in their ranges. It makes up a ton of the range. But for the off chance that they have a queen, I like to play a little deceptive and see that if I can get a bet in on the river called. And not only that, I think our hand's not strong enough to go for 3 streets of value. So I go ahead and decide to check back. The river's a 6. When the opposition checks to me once again, I think it's now time to go for a pretty healthy bet sizing. Again, what I'm targeting at this exact time is 2 things. They're either never going to make the call because they've bricked out anyways, or they're going to be put in a tough position with a hand like a queen. So my goal in this hand is to put that queen in a tough spot. I go ahead and bet $225. If they have a queen here, they're going to be a tough situation. And more importantly, I'm kind of showing off a ton of bluffs in this situation because I can easily have those straight draws and flush draws that bricked out as well. After a little bit of thinking, unfortunately, the opponent decides to make the fold though. Really happy with the way he played that hand. We're definitely starting off this session in a much better fashion than the last. In this next hand, there are 2 limps. Gets over to the OMC on the button, who opens to $50. Pretty big sizing for an OMC at least. We look down at ace-jack of spades in the small blind. I think this hand's just a little too hard to throw away. And we're playing fairly deep, to be fair. By this time, we're playing around 220-ish, 220 big blinds effective. Early position, the middle position player decide to make the call as well. The flop is king 4 deuce with the king of spades. I go ahead and check. Early position decides to play a little bit out of flow here and lead for $50. Middle position and the button decide to make the fold. It's on me. Look, I'm not going to crucify anybody for making a fold or a call here. And the reasoning behind me making the call here is that betting $50 into $220-ish is just an insane price to get. We have 2 nut back doors, both the nut flush and the nut straight draw back door. I think this is a very fine float in this situation, and I go ahead and make that call. The turn comes a 6. It absolutely does nothing for our hand. We're pretty much a little over it by this point. Not really any way we can really bluff at this pot here. I think, again, it's a very dry board texture. Not a lot of really strong hands I can represent in this range from the small blind. I go ahead and decide to make the check here, and luckily the early position player decides to check it through. The river is the best card in the deck probably. It's the ace of clubs, so we get saved with that Barry Greenstone on the river. I go ahead and check, and let me pause that right there. That is where we went really, really wrong. There's no way in hell that we're going to be getting there on the river and not play aggressively here. It's just so simple. This is a river where when we get to the river with this exact hand, this is a very simple half-size pot bet. We're talking about bet sizing, we're talking about playing good poker, and to miss an opportunity here and to play that trap style game that just doesn't work, I feel like ever in these stakes, you just need to bet your good hands. And just super upsetting and disappointing that that didn't click in my mind. I was just like, oh, this ace is so good for his range. Let me let him bluff at it. So I checked to him. Long story short, he checks back, but really, really poorly played on my end. He ended up showing down a king, so we missed just a ton of free value there. When you get there on the river, it's important to bet your hands. And the easiest thing to do is you can bet, and if you get raised, you can evaluate, and in a lot of times it's hard for them to have a bluff, and you just fold, and that's okay. By not betting on this river card, it's horrific, and I'm pretty happy. I'm fine with my flop call, and that's not results oriented. I mean it. I think it's a fine call when you have 2 nut backdoor draws. It's fine, especially when you're getting like 6-1 or something insane, So it's just disappointing, and that's probably the worst hand I played all night. So obviously we get lucky, we win it. But we just missed out on a ton of value that was there to be had. For the entire reason that you guys came to this vlog, if you guys are reading the title or the description or the thumbnail, an insane pot. Enough of the talking though. Let's get right into it. We're playing 6-handed at this point. Not the must-move game, but the game still hasn't filled up. It's only like 8 o'clock by this time. Under the gun opens to $35. I'm on the button with pocket kings. I go ahead and raise to $105. 3 betting here is just obviously mandatory. With the button position, it just works out perfectly. Folds back over to the under the gun player who decides on making the call. The flop comes 7, 5, 3, 2 clubs. Under the gun decides to check over to me, and in this situation, We can go either way here, but since we have the king of clubs, it makes it really tricky, actually. We have the backdoor second up flush draw to really protect our hand here. And honestly, our hand doesn't need a ton of protection. We're not really scared of too many things. And considering this is a 3-bet pot in which under the gun open and the button 3-bets, the ranges should be fairly narrow in this situation. What I mean by narrow is that for the most part, our hands are like reasonably face up. My range consists of like ace, queen, ace, jack plus, and 10s plus are going to be in that range as well. And the under the guns range should definitely be narrow, something similar to that. So ace, king, ace, queen, ace, jack, something in that range, obviously, and then over pairs as well. After a little bit of thinking, considering I am a fan of c-betting, I go ahead and do this stat, but we do down bet here. We bet $90. Once it gets over to her, she pretty quickly decides to raise to $200. It's very easy and very common to overplay your hand, and that's obviously not what our goal is here. So I decide to just make the call. The turn comes a pretty interesting card. It is the 6 of hearts, so the flush draw is still out there. But besides that, the 4 cards to a straight is there as well. She goes ahead and bets $250. In this situation, again, there's not much to do besides, I think, just call here. Again, with that initial thought process in mind, it's really tough for someone in this hand to have any 4 in their range. It's just not likely. Besides exactly pocket 4s, I don't know how a hand besides pocket 4s and ace 4 clubs can really be in the top of range here. That's the only 2 hands I can possibly think of that. Ranges are very narrow right now, and I don't think it's very likely that I'm up against a straight. So I decided to make the call. The river is the absolute gin card, as it's just as gem of a card as we can get. It is the king of spades. The flush draw breaks out, and if I was behind a set or 2 pair, I just don't know how I can possibly be losing this hand besides the 2 hands that I mentioned earlier. Even more interesting enough, the under the gun player decides to check it to me now. And in this situation, it's time to crank up the pressure. And after a little bit of thinking and deliberation, with the same knowledge and thinking that I mentioned earlier, where there's just no possible way I think that the opposition in this hand can possibly have a 4, I decide to bet the pot. I bet $1,100 on the river here with top set of kings, obviously trying to put my opposition in a blender. And not only that, we want to pole ourselves here, really polarize ourselves in this situation. It's really tough for us to have a nutted hand like this on a board where it's really easy to get lost in that straight draw that was out there that is available. I think that I'm representing a really, really narrow range, and this is the exact reason we go polarized. This is exactly why we decide to bet this big. So after a little bit of thinking, our opponent decides to make the call. We ship a huge pot. They go ahead and muck after we show pocket kings. They're pretty upset. They get up from the table immediately, and that is enough for us. We are like king flying off into the sunset or something, really thinking the hand through and playing as well as I did. I don't think I sucked at all. I think I had the best hand the whole way through. I think she had like pocket jacks or something like that, pocket queens. Best case scenario, top of range. Worked out in our favor this time, and I'm just super happy that I was able to use my brain to make the proper decisions and play really good poker. As you guys can see, a pretty quick session. And for all the grinders out there, God forbid the hit and run. I feel like I'm usually the victim in that situation, but today I was obviously the benefactor in that case. As you guys saw, one of just such a like this session was like really educational, especially with how bad I played in the last session. I mean, I feel like I played really well, and I was conscious of a lot of the spots that I wasn't so conscious to last time. And the other big thing is that the one hand that I feel like I played really bad, like I mentioned, which was that ace-jack floating on the flop with the double backdoors to the nut draw. Like that call, and I'm sure some people will, I guess, not. But the one thing I really don't like is, like I mentioned, was how I misplayed the hand and didn't go for value on the river. So, as you guys can see, we're still getting better, we're still learning, and that's the point, that's the whole premise of these videos, is to educate the little community we're building here and learn from your mistakes. There's gonna be times where, like, I'm gonna be pushing a lot of the action, and you guys can see that in my videos. And the goal is for that to happen and be the benefactor to that. And today, I was, as you guys saw, in that crazy pot to finish off the session. So we were into this session for $1,500 and out for $41.83. God, I'm like messing everything up. But so pretty huge upswing. Crazy that I pretty much just got in like the couple hands that I played. We played a little more than what we mentioned today. I think we only broke like 4 or 5 hands down, but the meat on the bone just pretty much came from like one hand, as I mentioned. So God knows I'm not gonna complain. But the goal is in poker, when you get a big hand, you want to get paid big. So luckily for us, that was the case tonight. The only thing I want to mention before we sign off here is that July 16th at 6 p.m. at the Lucky Lady Casino, Larry Flint Lucky Lady Casino in Gardena, California, which is here in LA. We're gonna be hosting our first ever meetup game. If you guys care at all about the brand, if you guys think I'm a fish and you guys want to come take my money, that's totally fine too. We're going to be hosting our very first meetup game, and it would mean the absolute world to me if you guys come through. There's actually going to be a Poker Atlas meetup link down in the description below, and you guys can set up that fashion fairly easily. Anyways, until the next time, I love you all dearly. I'm very thankful to have you guys here on this journey with me, and until then, deuces.